Good morning, Shitzel.
Hey Jenny, how are you today?
I'm great. I had some great ideas last night, so I was hoping that we could chat through a couple of things this morning. And I think it's a good opportunity to share this with some of the people who are interested in a little bit more information about us and how we approach things.
Sounds great.
So today I want to talk to you a little bit about our experiences as leaders and business leaders in how important it is to have our clarity around our purpose. And the reason I want to chat to you about this is because I feel that this is a lesson that is super important that I've learned, but I learned it a little bit later in my life and how really truly important it is.
Yeah, the good thing that it's even when we think it's late, it's never late. So it can be useful either for you or for people that will benefit from that experience.
So from what I've learned, I think that sometimes when we struggle at work or in life, but at work for the sake of this discussion, because we only have so much time today, it's because we're not in line with our purpose and our value and how it relates to what we're really great at, what we want to share, and the clients, the teams, the environments that we are working within. So for me, let me just give you a bit of an example. I think about it as my guiding principles. So whatever work I'm doing, whatever organization I'm in, I need to have a few things that are really important to me that I incorporate into the work that I'm doing. So these things for me are collaboration, creative and inclusive problem solving, because problems find me, they always find me, so I need to be good at solving them.
Yeah.
And keeping the highest goal in mind, right? We've all got an end goal, we've all got something we want to achieve. Let's not get too distracted about the roadblocks along the way, because that's a natural part of how things evolve. And the other thing too is continual improvement. Like you said, it's never too late.
There's always time for to learn something else.
Always time.
In my case, basically, I experience the same thing. I do have principles that have guided me since I started my career. Granted, when you're younger, sometimes you don't pay too much attention to how you feel and what are your beliefs, your values, because you're very focused on either getting the job or proving yourself like you're capable of doing the job, like in the earliest stage of your careers. That's what we all tend to do, right? But then when you get more experience and you get to interact with different people at different levels, you start to developing your own values and your own beliefs. And maybe not developing is not the right word, but you start to being aware of what are the things
Clarity.
that really matter to you. Like when you feel like this doesn't sit well, or I rather do this. That's how you start like identifying what will be your values, what it's really what important for you when interacting with other people. In my case, I would say being integral with my approach and ensuring that always people communicate from an authentic um, perspective, like being themselves, not only communicating because I'm telling you what you want to hear, but what I truly believe with all the respect, with all the compassion, but having that type of open and fluent communication in which I allow you to be yourself without criticism, just listening to what you need to say, and you allow me to be myself, and then we can accomplish good things. So that's how I those are things that are important for me. Like I couldn't be in an organization that I will always say yes or yes or yes, say without even questioning the reasons of what we are doing. Nothing wrong with that. If you're fine with that, that's fine. But for me, that wouldn't work. And I identify that as my pillars, let's say, because early in my career, I knew why I was doing what I was doing. Like I knew that I wanted my degree. My first degree is in law. So basically, why didn't I continue to be a lawyer? Because I didn't find that it was rewarding for me. Like what I found really rewarding for me is to develop people, to help people to become the better versions they can be of themselves. So that's why I kind of went into HR, and I always have that clear. So every decision I take, it's based on my why. Like my why, it's always my ultimate desire is for me to connect with people, is for me to see you better, like after interacting with me or having that conversation. So I think it's important not only for us or for people like our leading teams or leading companies to identify their why. It's important for everyone. If you're part of a team, you need to understand why do you do what you do and how, and that will be your purpose. And most of the time it's linked to your best talents. So it's kind of a chain, like one thing connects to the other.
Yeah.
But I think it all starts with asking yourself, why do I do what I do?
And I think to your point about how you approach things in your career is a direct reflection of that. If you're approaching it because your why is developing people, and then you take that why into your approach of having holistic and authentic conversations, you're then delivering better solutions because you have that openness, that respect around taking in different perspectives, different points of view, all of the things that are required to come up with better solutions in teams. If we knew all the answers ourselves, or we weren't open to hearing other opinions, hearing input, we wouldn't work with teams. And we certainly wouldn't get any value out of working with other people. And I think to your point is understanding why you're doing it every day. It's your compass. It makes sure that you're staying on the right track. And as I've led businesses for a long time, you know, when you look at all of the things that you have to achieve, the deliverables, the projects, it's an ongoing day-to-day
Battle.
battle, if we're going to use that word, of making sure that people are ready to go. You know, and I'll just use an example. Early in my career, you give everybody your instructions, they leave your office, and you're thinking, great. As the manager, my job was pretty easy. I just got everybody set up and away they go. But directing people and leading people is a minute-to-minute investment of your time and energy. Are people on the right track? Are they approaching things well? Do they have the tools they need? Are they communicating effectively? Are they working together effectively? Are they problem solving effectively? Luckily for me, not always, otherwise I wouldn't have much to do. So that's it. That's something to consider too. But that ongoing development, that ongoing conversation, that ongoing improvement has always been part of how I lead teams and run businesses. I never take it for granted that we're already as good as we need to be and we don't need to keep improving.
And to your point, knowing your why, and when you're conscious of what you're doing and why you're doing it, at the end it will transfer in more productivity for your team, in more even a better revenue for your company or for your organization. And why do I say this? Because in my own case, like if I was always attentive, I'll always mindful of getting the best of my team. Like my main concern was, are they doing the best they can with what they have? But that actually made me always being assessing their skills, always being measuring what they do best, always being attentive to their talents, even though sometimes they were not themselves aware of those talents. And as a manager, I will make sure that in my team, people were actually, to the best of their ability, doing what they really were good at doing. And of course
Yeah.
that will transfer in more productivity, that will transfer on being more engaged, because when you're doing what you're really good at the end you don't feel even the time passing, right? So in my own experience, knowing and having clear like my why and why do I do things, and sometimes without even thinking about it, I will apply my why to the way I operate in a daily basis. And at the end, the outcome was positive. I had my team was engaged because they were being happy, and sometimes with all the difficulties that we have to go through again in corporate, fine, that nothing is going, I mean, it's not like we will be blind to those challenges, but within the constrictions of being under tight deadlines and a lot of pressure and compliance and all that, at least the team was happy doing what they were doing. And they felt like this is rewarding. Of yes, not all of the time I can do what I think it's best to do. I need to sometimes adapt or compromise in some sort of things. But they were feeling that they were doing and giving their best. So that's how me knowing my why and applying that to my daily job at the end have an impact in other people knowing or being aware of their talents, which in consequence will make them aware of their why sometimes.
And I have to say, working with you and seeing you lead teams, I don't think you're giving yourself quite enough credit. And what I mean by that is that it's not just you as a leader leading by example. You have to actively, and I've seen you do this throughout your career, you have to actively help your team through that assessment process so that they are really clear on what they're good at. You're really clear on what they're good at so that as a leader, you can assign them appropriately, you can task them accordingly. You are going to be way more productive as an organization when you have the right people doing the right things. And that's not always super clear when people come into the table, especially if you're a manager, say in a new organization, and you have a team, everybody's assigned to something. Your first assessment is, your first assumption is that, okay, they're assigned to these jobs for a reason, they're probably pretty good at them. And that might not always be the case. There's sometimes when you have to say, you know, you're terrible at that. I don't want you to do that anymore. You have to do this thing instead. And so you leading by example is certainly the first step, but I would say that you have been very active in taking people through the process and helping them understand it and giving them opportunities to do things that they might not have known that they were good at until they had that exposure.
And also, another thing that I think doesn't help is that in the past, maybe we're in 2018 already, so it might not be as usual, but in the past, being well rounded was something
Yeah.
that to. So, of course, you are well rounded. It means you can do whatever I ask you to do, that's fine, I'll do it. Like I can do numerous tasks that not necessarily all of them will fit with your talents,
Yeah.
but because you wanted to get hired, get the job, you will put yourself in a position in which you will consider yourself well rounded. And no, you're not well rounded. You're good at this. And
Well, and
that's totally
saying
fine.
that you're offering a lot of value. Oh, look at, I can do all these things. Whereas I made that same mistake in my career. I'm like, what do you need? I can do anything. But
Exactly.
what I really need to say is like, there's no chance that I'm going to fix the computer. That's not happening. Now, we do have a conflict over there between three different people who can't agree on what time it is. That I can fix. So we all need to, again, recognize that when we're working in teams, there's a reason for a lot of us there.
Exactly. And again, to go back to the purpose and your value, it's when you stop being well rounded and you acknowledge what you really enjoy doing, what you really are good at, what people really appreciate of your work, is that that acknowledgement, that awareness will take you to actually being aware or know what your purpose is. Because if you're most likely, if you're good at, I don't know, public speaking or transferring knowledge, well, most likely your purpose will be some sort of being a teacher, being a facilitator, people that transfer knowledge. So most of the time, your highest value, it's linked to your talent, which is linked to your purpose. At least that's how I see it.
It is. It is. That's exactly it. I'm so glad that you're my partner.
Me too. I'm so glad that we're doing this together because it's true. Like, and I can identify your highest value as partner, or in the past when we used to work together. Like, it's quite easy for someone that it's trying to be mindful of their own value, to be mindful of other people's value as well, because we know, like, if I'm good at this, most likely I'm not good at everything.
Exactly.
So if there's something that needs to be said in a diplomatic but professional and straight way, I'll ask Jenny to do it because she's the best at doing that. So it's I don't feel the pressure that I have to do it everything myself, and that's kind of liberating, but that gives you a lot of space to get better every time on doing what you're doing and getting more specialized, and in knowing that you're doing this because this is how you feel good, how you are, how you're happy, where you have the highest value, the highest impact, and it's like a cycle. So everything will feed, one thing will feed the other, and I think that's how successful entrepreneurs or team leads or managers will find a rewarding career. It's just, this is what I do best, this is how I can do it. I identified, I'm not ashamed or afraid of not being good at everything. Thank God I have a team for that, or I don't have a team but I have peers, I have collaborators, and I do this because for me the most rewarding thing is, and then you fill the blank.
And I want to also just say that a lesson that I learned very late in my career, but I have learned it, so I'll share it now, is that just because you can do something and you're good at something doesn't mean you should. So a personal example from my career was I um, I worked for a manager who was not a pleasant person to work with. So I said a manager there. Should tell you know there's been several, so that we can take many examples from this. But um, we won't name names in this particular chat, but they know who they are. Anyway, so
No, that's fine.
that's fine. So at one point, what I believed was that continuing on in this job was showing that I was strong enough to do it. I could do it. I was tough enough. I could put up with all of the negativity and the bad things that were coming with the job. And I literally kind of woke up one day and realized just because I can do this doesn't mean I have to. I don't have to prove that I'm tough or prove that I'm resilient or prove that I can, take a lot of crap at work and still, power through. I don't have to. I answer to me. So if that's not aligned with what I want to be doing, I can change. And it sounds, now that I say it, pretty obvious, but at the time I really had a struggle with it. I thought that I had to keep going to prove that I could.
Because keep going to prove that you could, it's actually the easy path.
It was the easier path, you're right.
Of course, because
It was.
we are brain wired to work in corporate. We've been working in corporate since ever. Nothing wrong with working in corporate, but it just gives you some sort of way of operating
Structure.
that you just adapt. You have to do this. Okay, fine. Like this is needed. Okay, I'll do it. So basically, the most hard part is to find the courage to stick to your why, your values, and your true talents. That's the courageous part, because someone will tell you, no, Jenny, you need to do this, and you are the general manager, so you need to tough it up. So a lot of people will tell you what you need to do or have expectations. But what it's really courageous is to say, you know what? if just because I can do it, not necessarily mean I will do it or I need to do it.
And I find that you don't get, I shouldn't say you don't get, I didn't get a lot of support or encouragement when I said, okay, I don't have to do this anymore because I don't want to do this anymore. I don't have anything to prove. But when you veer away from the norm, from society's expectation, you know, you have a very high level corporate job, you're very stable, you should continue doing that. Stepping away from that, you also need some courage to encounter what people might think of you.
Exactly.
And it's not just coming to grips of with yourself, it's also just, you know, being prepared for there's going to be some potentially some other opinions on, as there always are, right, on what you should do. Now for me, the outside opinions were less problematic than my own internal struggle with it. So
Yeah,
once I got my internal struggle with it, I didn't care too much about the noise outside, but it is a struggle
it
to
is.
move away from the norm,
And is
to
that,
challenge the norm.
and when you meditate, when you interiorize about your why and what is the reason that you do what you do, I feel like it's there where you find the strength of being courageous or taking the decision. Because if you really feel that this is your why, and it's your true why, it's what you feel, it's what your heart is telling you that this is the reason why you do what you do. Even sometimes people will go deeper, and this is the reason of me being in the planet, or whatever the case is. But it's there where the courage lies. You go there, you go back to your why, and of course, you're going to find, with more or less difficulty, the courage to actually stick to it, because you know that's the right thing to do. And unless your mind is being influenced, which happens most of the time, and when we are younger and all that, your mind and your circumstances can be influenced for your environment, for your family, for society, for everything. But when you are truly aware of yourself, the reason why you do things, and how that purpose reflects or get an outlet through your talents, then you say, you know what, fuck it, and that's it. That's how it
Okay, you heard it here.
is.
There's our advice. Love, success, empowerment.
Perfect.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.